screwdriver on it. And I was out there at the end of the boom, sitting on these pipes, and the thing started boom, 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 bouncing up and down. I couldn't figure out what was going on with it. Then it stopped. So I started working again. It did it again. Well, then I looked down on the ground, and there was that oiler on the ground jumping up and down on the hook.
How high were you in the air?
150 feet.
Were you scared?
I was concerned. I don't say I was scared, but I was concerned about what was going on.
Tell
I
us
couldn't
about
figure out what was going on.
Tell us about the leak.
The what?
The leak.
Leak.
The steam valve leak.
Oh, there wasn't a leak. It just they all slammed shut. The valves.
Oh,
There was a water leak there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The water
Okay,
leak.
the water, the cooling tower. There was a pipe about 3 foot around, and it emptied the whole billions of gallons of cooling. That's when they shut it down. That when it just scrammed itself. But there was probably from here to the middle of town, there was nothing. It was just open land to the lake. And there was a building out there. It was a service building, and the water was 3 foot high on the side of that building, where the water was going out there, going to the lake. And then they called me and said, "We need 3 electricians, and we're under an alert." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" Or "I'm going the other way." And they said, "No, it's all right. Just come on in, bring the guys." Okay, so we went there, had to light it up. It looked like an airplane crash. They had every piece of that pipe. It washed the gravel away, washed everything away from it. But every piece of that pipe, they had a little flag there and marked it, and they put it all back together to see what happened to it. So then, after about 4 days, they went over to Unit 2, took that one out, put it in Unit 1, started it back up.
Tell us about the steam valve thing.
Oh, when you're in a reactor, when the steam valves, main isolation, main steam isolation valve, MSIV. I was in there one time and they scrammed it, and them things slammed. Oh man, it sounded like a train hitting another train, and them things went off. Boom! Nobody knew we were going to do it.
Okay.
I forgot.
All right. I think that's all the questions we have for right now.
Okay.
Wait. Tell us about more experiences like in the control room, like.
Well, we used to go in the control room and run cables in there, and you'd have to pull up the floors and put these cables. They all had a path that they had to go through. Underneath that control room was all little channels and stuff, and you had to put them in this channel and up in that channel and then over into this one. Each one of them had their separate path, and each one of them knew, had to know where the heck they were going. But when you were in there and you started drilling, say you had to put a new button in the control panel when it's operating, you had to make sure you had catch every piece of metal to cut a hole in that, to put a new button in there. You couldn't let any of those metal get anywhere where it could short something out.
Control.
It was just very clean in there, very nice in there, but you had to know what you were doing when you were doing it.
Was the control room only for testing, since you said the reactor only operated, like it was pretty much operational by itself?
Yeah, but those guys monitored it in there. That's where the operators were. They monitored what was going on in that reactor 24 hours a day. They watched all those gauges and watched what was going on. Made sure the cooling water was flowing correctly. Made sure the temperature inside that reactor wasn't getting too high. Made sure that there was no radioactive releases anywhere inside of that containment. And they monitored all of that, and they made sure it ran right, and they still do.
Did you ever work at the cooling towers? Did you do anything with the cooling towers?
Yes.
And what
I went
did
up
you
on
do?
one time, and they sent me up there to put grounding sleeves in when they were building them.
What are grounding sleeves?
They had put pieces of copper from the inside to the outside, and you put a bolt on the outside, put a bolt on the inside. So when they brought grounding straps up on the outside, they had some place to put the grounds up. So when lightning hit the cooling tower, it would just dissipate. It wouldn't do anything. And they were about. I left. I finally left. I said, I'm not doing it, because they were pouring concrete in my back pocket when I was up there. I said, that's it. I'm out of here. I'm not doing it. I left.
When was the plant built?
Ooh.
Gosh,
Well,
I drove a catering truck out there when it was just a big
I
hole in the
started
ground.
there. I started working there in 1975, and I worked as a lineman. And we were putting high lines into the place to get the temporary power in there.
So it was probably 76 when I was driving a catering truck out there.
Did
76, 77.
Did the reactor have control rods? And what were they made out of?
Carbon.
Carbon. And how would carbon help the radioactive materials?
It doesn't help it. When they put the control rods down, it sucks up the electrons and stops the nuclear reaction.
Did they have nuclear control rod pools where the reactor was, or close to where the reactor was? Did they have the pools where they cool the fuel rods, but in the reactor?
Yes, they cool the fuel rods in there. Yeah.
Best workers
But
I ever had.
when it gets down time for them to refuel the reactor, it's what they call all rods out. They took all the control rods that were already sucked out of there, and it was just kind of running free, But when they had new fuel, they had the control rods down there to control it.
Was the reactor made out of uranium?
No, reactor's made out of steel.
That's all the questions.
The fuel rods are made out of uranium.
That's all the questions.